Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Nightmare Encrypted, out June 7th on AFM Records. The album has 10 tracks, 48 minutes in length, and this is the band's 12th full-length studio album. They are a French metal band. Now, the design of this record showcases the diversity of the album. And it does it in a way that allows the record to be very fluid, very dynamic, with a lot of ebbs and flows, but at the same time, still feel very connected and still feel very balanced. And I think that comes down to two main core elements, the guitars and the vocals. The guitars and the vocals kind of become a little bit of the breadcrumbs that connects not just the songs together, but connects the overall experience of this record. And when you have two key components like that, being very consistent in what they offer the album, it's a lot easier to be diverse, it's a lot easier to bring in different influences to the table and create songs that slightly diverge from one another and pull the listener in a lot of different directions. And that's exactly the design that this record puts forward. Now, once you get into the sound, once you get into the nitty-gritty of what the sound on this record is all about, I think you're going to find this album very difficult to label or to categorize under one single genre, under one single umbrella. This album is power metal, this album is thrash, this album is melodic death metal, this album is melodic metal, this album is heavy metal, this album is symphonic metal, it's symphonic death metal. This album is a lot of different things. It has a lot of different faces, and it has a lot of different sound experiences as you go across all 10 songs. With the caveat, like I mentioned before, of guitars, the experience, the execution, the impact that the guitars have and the vocals have, becoming the common denominators that allow all of these genres to coexist together and somehow make sense and make the album work as a whole. Now, the sound quality, the production behind this album really elevates the elements, all of them. It elevates the quality of the guitar sound, the quality of the drums, the quality of the bass. The vocals really stand out as well. It's an album that, from a production standpoint, while bringing everything together, while creating at times almost a larger-than-life experience, almost an arena style, a cinematic soundscape, it also gives you a very clear-cut impact of what each and every single element is doing within the songs and within the overall song composition and soundscape as well. So this allows the tracks to be textured, to sound big, to have big sound, big volume, but be easier to digest, to be a little bit more catchy, to be a little bit more hooky, to come across with a sense of simplicity that makes the process of listening to this album pleasurable, that gives you this ability to really enjoy the tracks, to really feel connected with the album, and still allows them to create a record that has a lot to offer, that has a lot of layers that obviously you can peel, but at the same time you don't really have to if you don't want to. It's an album that is easy to appreciate and is easy to see it for what it is, and the production really helps from that standpoint. And I don't think you can create that more melodic side of the record, and I don't think you can create the symphonic side of the record and still infuse a drive and heaviness without that production really defining all of the great parameters that this album puts together. Now, when you look at the individualities within those parameters, within that sound, I want to start off with the bass, because normally we start, you always want to focus on the guitars, like I said, one of the key common denominators, but I want to talk about the bass because this record really gave the bass a chance, and it really allows the bass to come through, and that bass coming through helps create some groove. It helps also sometimes infuse a slight sense of darkness to the way the songs are coming across, because overall is a super bright sounding record. It's a really big sounding record, and when you have a big sounding record, it honestly tends to be a little bit brighter, a little bit more open, so the bass makes things feel a little bit closer at times and infuses some darkness. It also gives some grooviness. I really like the bass sound on this album because it's not in the forefront all the time, but when you notice it, it becomes something that you can really point the finger at and really hold on to as you're navigating through those individual tracks. Now, the guitar sound on this album is really good. I enjoy the execution, I enjoy the diversity, the eclectic nature of approach that this album has, and I also enjoyed the heavier side of their sound. While the melodic side is there, and the guitars definitely play a role in creating that melody for the forefront of the sound experience, because of the symphonic elements that are hidden within the mix, or that are at sometimes flourish all the way to the top. Those also bring some melody into the big picture. So the guitar side, I tend to focus a little bit more on the heavier sound and how they help pack and create some thickness around that heaviness. And the drums help that as well, because the drums really give consistency to the sound throughout. They always feel like they're giving the sound a little bit more substance, making the sound feel like it has a little bit more in it. It's not one of those albums that has a big sound but there's nothing in it. No, this album has a lot of substance in it, and the guitars and drums to a certain extent help create that, with the guitars then obviously separating themselves from the drums, being more driven, being more melodic, infusing different elements, bringing different influences to the table, and really being the ones that define the direction on every single track. Last but not least, that final component and one of the pillars of this record, the vocals. This is Barbara's first record with the band, and I think this band needs some consistency. They need some stability as far as a vocalist is concerned. They've gone through several vocalists, so I think the band can only do better and can only achieve what they want to achieve if they have some consistency on the vocal front. Now, what does Barbara bring to the table? I think she brings more maturity to the table. Her voice has a better sense of direction, and it has a better sense of where the songs are going. I honestly don't know if these tracks were created around her voice, or if her voice is able to really fit the tracks. It's one of those, what came first, the chicken or the egg? But I always felt like her voice on this album, it emphasized the right atmosphere, the right elements, the right experience on any single song. Either be the tracks that have a little bit more sense of heaviness, that needed a little bit more of a deeper delivery, or the songs that had a little bit more of a symphonic power metal impact, a little bit brighter, and her voice also went with it. The thing that it's really consistent about her delivery is the warmth within her voice. Regardless of where she is within her range, her delivery is always very warm, and it adds great quality, and it adds this sense of embracing the listener, which I feel like is really important for a band like this, with this kind of sound, and especially with this kind of dynamic movement as far as the sound itself is concerned. So when you put all of these pieces together, I think this is one of the better Nightmare records of the last couple of years. I definitely feel like sound-wise, it's a more complete album, because it offers a lot more to the listener without completely losing track of who the band is and where they're going. They were able to create diversity but still find a way of connecting the commonalities within that same diversity. And then on the vocal standpoint, I feel like Barbara is the right vocalist for this band, and she's definitely the right vocalist for this sound. So when you put this together, you really have a strong album in your hands, and Nightmare is releasing, like I said, one of their better records in the last couple of years. That's without a shadow of a doubt. Now, as far as favorite songs are concerned, I want to start off with Voices from the Other Side. Great guitar and drum sound together, really bringing a little bit more of a heavier side to the song in the verses, giving some thickness to the sound as well, and working really well with the vocal dynamic. The vocals really match that aggression, that sense of intensity that the sound has. Then you start to see the song move more into a melodic, brighter sound in the pre-chorus, creating almost a dip or a valley, if you will, and the vocals adapt to that more melodic approach. They become a little bit lighter, not as cumbersome, a little bit lighter. And then it moves you back into the chorus, which sees almost a return of the verses in terms of the experience, both musically and vocally, a little bit heavier sound. And this is an interesting dynamic, because it allows you to have a very balanced approach versus chorus, but using the pre-chorus as the reset to allow those two elements to stay very equal to one another. It's also a track that you see the bass peaking, you see the bass coming through, and definitely adding grooviness to the way the whole track is put together. Next we have Encrypted, a very high drive song, very powerful with a lot of melody, using symphonic elements to bring in that bigger sound, that bigger experience, using harsh vocals to create a different dynamic. This is a really interesting song from that standpoint, because musically it's a much bigger, brighter, more open sounding song. And normally you would think that you would go with a vocal performance that would enhance that experience, a lighter vocal delivery that would make the song even more brighter, even more open, even more melodic. Instead, they went with a harsher style delivery, which creates this counterbalance to what you're listening to, creating this symphonic, almost melodic death metal sound that is really interesting because it feels like it doesn't really fit, but the way they created the song, the vocals really enhance the brighter side of everything else around it, almost separating, creating more depth, creating more distance, making the song sound even bigger. I really enjoy this track because of this unique dynamic that the song has. Last but definitely not least, White Lines, a more traditional heavy metal song with some power metal elements. In this track, the guitars soar, the vocals soar, everything is about, it's not about size, but it's about power, it's about delivery, not aggression, not intensity, but power, really pushing the song through across all of its different elements. The track itself feels very old school heavy metal / power metal. And then the solo on this track, the solo section on this track has that same old school vibe. So it's a track that all the elements bring that old school approach to the table, to the forefront, in the sound, in the vocals, in the guitar playing. Everything has that aura, everything has that vibe, and it's almost a throwback to the band's origins. And I really like this idea of creating a modern sounding song that sounds like an old sounding song. Really interesting, and one of my favorite songs on the entire record. I really like White Lines. Definitely in my top 5 tracks, in my top 3, but I would say even higher than 3. It's definitely one of my favorite ones for this album. This is it, Nightmare, Encrypted, out June 7th on AFM Records. Let me know your thoughts on the band, on the singles. Hit me up in the comment section, and I'll see you all at the next video. Take care, guys.